on chapter 10.5, application of stuff. I kind of lied to you. There is no 10.5. Pretty much you've made it to the end of the material. For those of you who have been working with me, you are finished way earlier than the end of the year. This is actually May 6th right now, so those of you who were with me or at least caught up at some point and started working like you're supposed to, congratulations, you get 2 weeks off earlier than you expected to. And again, your grade, if it's at an 80% or higher, I'm going to turn it into 100 once you hit this point. So for those of you who are jumping ahead to this, fine. Just make sure you go back, because what you want to remember is, let me go ahead and explain some things to you. By the way, your credit for this video is for finishing the whole thing. But what's going to happen is you're taking Algebra 1 right now. You're going to take Geometry next year. And then you're going to take Algebra 2 the year after that. Now, some of you are happy right now because you're like, well, I hate algebra because I don't know anything about algebra, plus, all this stuff is going on and it's great. And so you do get a year off from algebra because this is going to be your thinking side. The problem is, for those of you who do not at least go back and try to answer all the sections I gave you, if this is a meter of where you belong, this is terrible and this is great. I don't think any of us can really be here because I couldn't really push you on this material, but I at least tried to get you to here. And if you were at least here, then when you go down to Algebra 2 after a year, because remember what happens whenever you don't use a skill is that it degrades, and so most of us are around here, at least this area. And so next year when you're in geometry, your skill set is going to decline a little bit, and at least maybe you're at the 50% range to where your teacher in Algebra 2, when they show it to you, it'll come back to mind, and maybe after a few questions you'll get it because you've seen it, because you've thought about it, and because you figured it out. But the thing about the way this works is if you do not go back, and again, I know I said 80% or higher you pass, or at least with an A, whatever, but the thing you've got to keep in mind for those of you who are trying to work the system, who are watching this video way ahead of time because you did not do Chapter 9, you did not do Chapter 12, there is key information in Chapter 9 and Chapter 12, and if you don't do it, you'll be here, which is already below what you need, and then in this year off, you're going to forget what you learned, which is going to put you in the terrible range, and then when you go to Algebra 2, I guarantee you will not make it. Teaching Algebra 2, listening to stories about Algebra 2, this is a extremely hard class, and so the reason I'm tough on you, the reason I push you the way I do, is because if I don't prepare you here, and then you take a year off and you go to a class to where you have to know how to factor, where you have to know the quadratic formula, where you have to know how to deal with radicals, where you have to know how to graph a line, where you have to know how to do a parabola, where you have to know how to solve very well, where you have to know how to think. This class does not start like other algebra classes do, to where it gives you a review of all that stuff. Now, I'll give you a slight review, but the teachers teaching this class, especially if I'm teaching it, which I don't know if I ever will because they usually move me to freshman algebra 2, but I know that when I taught this in freshman algebra 2, there was no time for me to show people again all the way from the beginning how to factor, all the way from the beginning how to do all this stuff. My lesson when I get to it means you at least are at the 70-80%. I'll go over some small things and then we get into it. I go over some small things, then we get into it. Some of you, when I say factor, what comes to mind is multiplies to equal something, adds to make something else, find the number, split it, and if that came to mind, that means you have factoring down. Some of when you see quadratic formula, you think negative b plus or minus square root of a squared, or b squared minus 4ac. As long as something comes to mind, you've got that. The problem is, those of you who don't go back and finish this, when you see quadratic formula and you haven't done the quadratic formula, nothing comes to mind. When you didn't learn how to factor like I told you to, the only thing comes to mind is I hate it. When you see radicals, you're like, I don't know how to do a radical, so you cross that off. Graphing, I never learned how to graph a line with y equals 1/3 x plus 2. I never learned how to graph 2x plus 3y equals 6. Nope, you're going to fail that too. And so what happens is, yes, you'll make it through this. And yes, you'll make it through this because this has little algebra in it. But once you get here, which is the third credit you need, which is where I've seen this happen over the last 2 or 3 years, students who kind of coast through Algebra 1, as soon as they get to Algebra 2, because I ask about this stuff all the time with the Algebra 2 courses, they fail and they have to take it again as a senior. And so I need you to understand that there is a gauntlet of material where people get caught. First, second, third, fourth. The whole purpose for this is to kind of teach you the game so you understand what's going on. Some of you, when they came in, and you remember this, when people came into this class in the beginning of the year, they were not prepared because they kind of coasted through the year before. And so they got cut off here in the first 3 weeks because they weren't ready. Some barely made it in, so they made it through the first 3 weeks, but by the time we got to the end of the first quarter, they were stuck because, again, whatever they came in with was not enough, and so therefore they had to drop at the end of the second quarter. Some of them made it to the second quarter, but they barely made it to the second quarter, so as soon as we started something in the second quarter and they had run out of gas, hey, guess what? They had to drop. Some of them barely made it through that, and so they were still there, but they were almost out of gas, and by the time we got to the semester, guess what? They needed to drop. Some of you barely made it through the first semester, and again, this is a true story because you've seen people disappearing, but they made it to the semester, but they barely made it through the semester. And I mean, I'm talking about 60% F somewhere, barely passed the final. And so when the third quarter started and we did something tough, guess what? They had to drop. And then some of them barely made it here, and then they're failing here. And this is not a drop. This is a fail. This gauntlet runs every single class that you ever take. If you walk into a class unprepared, you're going to miss here because there's no way you get past it. If you walk into class barely unprepared or barely prepared, you're going to get past the first sword, but you're going to get cut right here because there's no way you get through all the material that ended in that first quarter. If you go a little bit better than that, yeah, maybe you barely make it here, but then you fail the quarter. I'm sorry, you barely make it here, but you fail the quarter. Or you make the quarter, but you barely make the quarter. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't do your job, I guarantee you one of you is going to drop at one of these points in Algebra 2. You're either going to drop in the first quarter because you really didn't do anything at all. You're going to drop at the second quarter because you really weren't prepared. You're going to drop at the beginning of the second quarter because you realize, yeah, I really did kind of try to cheat the system. Or you're going to fail the semester because, again, there's a whole lot of stuff in there you need to know. So I'm sorry for preaching like that, but I had to do it because some of you think that I am stupid. Some of you think the system is easy. It doesn't work like that. But I do want to allow you to thank me. I do want to thank you for allowing me to teach you whatever it is I have taught you. For some of it was math, some of it was wisdom, some of it was just the fact that everyone won't bend to your will just because your mom or your dad or you've always gotten away with it at home. This is real life. It does not work like that. For some of you it was work ethic, whether it was, seeing that you have a work ethic, whether it was seeing that your work ethic sucks and you need to pick it up because it only gets tougher from here. And from some it was just showing you the truth about yourself, whether it was good or bad. My goal is not to help you pass my math class. I love when students pass my math class, but I know that math does not determine where you end up in life. There are people, as I like to say, who failed math when I was in school who are doing way better than me right now because this is not a gauge in terms of life of where you end up. It is just, can you learn how to do the math? But it is to prepare you for life situations, the struggles that you faced, the moments where you wanted to quit and you quit. That is a no-no. But the moments where you wanted to quit and you kept going and found success, that helps you whenever you see things in real life. So I am trying to help you. I was trying to help you for the whole life that you have ahead of you. I do hope that you learn that you should not react extremely unless an extreme reaction is necessary. I hope you recognize that whenever people were acting stupid, whenever people were doing things that I blatantly knew they should not do, and I did not react, it wasn't because I was dumb. It wasn't because I didn't see it. It was because at the time, there was no need for me to react in an extreme way. It was just time for a conversation or a note or a small little talk. But for example, when I moved people to their own seats, it's because at that time I needed to do something extreme to get their attention. And so you do need to make sure, again, that if you're going to go extreme, do so with a plan. Obviously, I didn't get to execute all the plans that I had because the year ended before, or we had to leave before the year ended. But trust me when I tell you, the people who were going to change were about to change as soon as that fourth quarter came along, because by the time whatever plans I had set in motion in the third quarter By the time that fourth quarter would have got about 2-3 weeks in, they would have definitely done whatever they could do to kind of get out of whatever it was that we did. So anyway, otherwise, if you do just randomly do that, you're breaking things, and although you feel better now, you're still in the same place where you were before. Think about relationships when you cuss somebody out because something happened, and then 3 days later you realize that it was not that major at all, but then that whole relationship is crap, and there's nothing you can do about it. Number one, I do not show emotion because I know that everyone in the world does not jump up and down, clap their hands, and scream your name to the mountaintops just because you've done your job. Am I silently clapping, screaming, and jumping? Yes. I am proud of everything you all do whenever I see you find success, but I need you to understand that the best performers don't do it for other people's reactions. They do it for their own satisfaction and the feeling they have done the best they know how to do. The main reason why the best performers do well is because the fire is not coming from, if this is you, and this is the fire. Sorry, I don't know how to draw fire. The fire is not coming from out here. The fire is coming from in here. That's not a heart, that is a fire. In other words, there is an internal fire that burns and makes them want to do it. And those are the best performers. They don't do it because, earning Teacher of the Year makes people love them. They do it because earning Teacher of the Year makes them feel like, yes, I knew I could do it, and so it comes from here. I don't care how many people know that I've earned Teacher of the Year. You barely see it. I don't even have the trophy. I think I broke it in 5 minutes by the time I got it, and it's at my mom's house. I haven't looked at it. I think I looked at it once when I got it, and I haven't looked at it again because I did not do it for that. I did it for the fact of knowing that I could do it. And so, yes, people are going to celebrate you, but don't do it for the celebrations. Do it because that's what you are supposed to do. If you've made it this far, then you are truly bored. But the last thing I want to say I appreciate is your ability to soak in as much as you can and learn from others who have been there. Don't ever be too proud to listen to people. Doesn't mean you can learn everything. My brother, for example, has been to jail, has been a whole lot of different things, but there's a whole lot of stuff during his bad decisions, during his good decisions that I learned from him and so therefore you can learn from anyone. Just make sure that you are doing that because, again, everything that you can learn from people will help you out. Other than that, enjoy your summer. Stay safe. We don't really know what's going on because you hear about the towers and you hear about the bats and you hear about everything else, and so if you don't really know what's going on, you do want to make sure you are cautious. Don't just go out there and just because your friends say, you know what, this is what I think it is, and let's go ahead and do that, then that'll get you caught up, and all it takes is one bad decision to mess up everything. But just make the best choice you know how to make, and then repeat again, and then repeat again. That is all I have for you. Again, congratulations if you finished on May 6th, but as long as you finished good, just keep in mind this stuff will be back and you will need to see it. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you.